Welcome, everyone, to the Better Love Movement podcast, where you will finally learn how to intentionally do dating and relationships right. My name is Anita Stoudemire, and I am a licensed professional therapist and your personal love mentor. I've worked with thousands of singles and couples, giving them the skills needed to attract and keep the amazing love they desire. It is my heart's work to help people to get the skills needed to not only become the very best versions of themselves, but to help them grow and evolve emotionally and relationally. You can absolutely have the romantic relationship of your dreams. Come and let me show you how. Hello, everyone, and welcome back to this week's episode of the Better Love Movement podcast. So we are in episode number 162 this week, and it is entitled Adopting the Masculine Blueprint and Embodiment Practices. Today, I am talking to GS Youngblood. Let me tell you a little bit about GS. GS Youngblood is the author of The Masculine in Relationship and the Art of Embodiment for Men. He coaches men to be more grounded in their masculine energy and more relational with their feminine partners. Teaching through the lens of masculine leadership, he pulls in principles from a variety of fields: psychology, martial arts, tango, meditation, and BDSM. All of his teachings are filtered through the experiences of his and his clients' real-world long-term relationships to see what actually works and what doesn't. Welcome, GS.
Thank you, Anita. It's great to be here.
Yes. All right. So I got familiar with you through Instagram. That's where I first kind of stumbled upon you and your platform and your book. So can you tell my audience a little bit about yourself and about, I've been referring some male clients to you because I think your book is gold. It's definitely what the modern day man needs, but just a little bit about yourself.
Yeah, as you've already said, I'm an author of 2 books, and of course, there'll be more forthcoming. I do enjoy writing, and I'm a men's coach, and I work really almost exclusively with men in relationship. And, in the olden days, the problem that we all had was men, misogyny. And while that absolutely still exists in the world, the guys that come to me are really, they flip to the other side of the pendulum, and they're the proverbial nice guy, where they're just really trying to keep their partner happy and stay out of trouble, which they think will make things better and make her happy, but it doesn't. It actually enrages her when she experiences him as having no center or groundedness. And that's what I work with men on. And, I've been through my own journey of finding what I call my masculine core. And I can go into that if you want, but suffice it to say that led me to create what I consider to be a modern template for masculinity. This is not the 1950s anymore, but we also don't want it to become that other side of the pendulum where guys are really walking around like a bunch of wet noodles in the world. To me, it was how can a man embody these qualities of masculine energy and still be with a woman who's powerful as hell, who's got all her own capabilities, and is going to lead the relationship in certain ways. How can he bring his brand of leadership? And that's the masculine blueprint. And I know we'll go into that, but it's a 3-part framework for what I consider to be a masculine core.
Okay. Let's talk a little bit about that, because the first book that you wrote is what I recently read, The Masculine in Relationship, a blueprint for inspiring the trust, lust, and devotion of a strong woman. So I finished that book. I've moved on to audio so I can take notes. But tell us more about this masculine blueprint. It's the 3 core principles for developing a healthy masculine core, correct?
Yeah, that's right. So there's 3 elements to the blueprint. And let's go through them one by one, but I'll do the short version, and then you can pull me back into wherever you want to focus. But element 1 is respond versus react. So this is the quality of a man who he lives his life moment to moment out of choice rather than just, reacting to all the stimuli in the world. And There's a deliberateness to him, and there's a stillness to him, and a choicefulness to the way that he goes through life. And as you know from the book, one of the biggest things that a man can do to have more of this quality is daily embodiment practice. And so I go into that in chapter 10, of course. And as you know, I wrote the whole second book on that topic. And I say it over and over, and I'll say it again here. It's the number one thing a man can do to really build his masculine core. And what you're doing is you're grounding your nervous system so that all that, typical anxiety that comes up, you clear that out when you really ground your nervous system. And that's what embodiment practice does. It actually addresses you at the nervous system level rather than just like more information about how to become more grounded and settled.
Right.
We're actually working down at that level, below the mind, below the cognitive, down at the nervous system level. And let's circle back to that, because of course I want to talk about embodiment all day long.
Yep.
So that's the first element of the blueprint: respond versus react. Now, the second element is provide structure. So this is the quality of man that first and foremost has clarity within himself about his own needs, his preferences, and his boundaries. And then he can extend that out into the relational space of having clarity of what might be the right thing for the couple. Or if it's not just in the intimate relationship, then, his immediate world around him, such as at work. And bringing that clarity and then bringing that to the table in form of directionality, in the form of structure. And it doesn't mean that he's making all the decisions and telling everybody what to do. Mm-hmm. What it means is he brings this clarity about what he needs. He brings this clarity about what he thinks the world needs, and then presents that in the form of leadership that is more of an invitation rather than compulsion or control. And so for me, it always comes down to the simplest of example of, like, your wife or girlfriend asks you where you want to go to dinner. Right. And you say, you know what, I would love to go to that Mexican place tonight. How does that work for you? So there's an inclusion element that really transcends like being in control or any kind of misogyny or anything like that. So I like to think of it as clarity plus inclusion. Okay. So that kind of man becomes an ordering force, an organizing force in his world. And that's the second element of the blueprint: provide structure. So the third element is create safety. And this is a really important one. You know this, of course, you and I talked briefly about it before we started, but creating safety in my humble view, but I kind of think this is true for the universe. It's like, if a man wants his woman to open to him, open her heart, open her body, mm-hmm. she's got to feel safe, physically, financially, and particularly emotionally safe. And that's tough. This is the toughest one to create emotional safety, especially, for us guys, when our feminine partner is pretty fired up and they're fired up at us. It gets tough. Yeah. And I know we're going to go into that in detail, but so that whole third section of the book is about how do I create emotional safety. I didn't talk a ton about physical and financial in this book, but we talk a lot about emotional safety. And this is, you told me before we started, this is the number one thing women would think about. It's the number one thing we're thinking about too. Like, whoa, what do I do when she's all fired up? Right. And so I wanted to give guys tools on how to do that. And then when a guy can successfully do that, it's like things magically open up in the relational space between the two in the couple. And it really works like magic when done properly. So that's the third element: creates safety. So I know I talked a lot, so I'll pause there.
I'm going to talk a little bit about each of those. So the first one I especially love because as a therapist, one of the things that I do in my therapy practice is I do teach people how to regulate their nervous system.
Yeah.
How important it is that we not be so reactive to everything. I know in my own life, I studied Stoicism for 19 years. And just that practice of studying and practicing Stoicism helped me tremendously. Like everything in my world changed when I learned how to steady my nervous system, but also just adopt just a tinge of Stoicism when it came to things, not feeling like I had to react to everything. So yeah, I love the first one. I think all of us could benefit from that, but most certainly a man knowing how to respond versus react. I think that's
Yeah.
really, really important. So that one I love, especially as a therapist, because that's one of the things I do is teach people how to calm that limbic system. I say, activate the front of your brain. That's the executive, logical part of your brain. Don't let that back of your brain, take over. So I love that one. The second one provides structure. So this stood out to me, that the man starts with what he wants, right? What do you want? What do you want or don't want, right? Start with yourself, like figure yourself out. I love that. I'm like, that's so simple. But yet, like you said, men will get caught up in, well, what does she want? What will make her happy? And we get off track. We get a little off track with that. So I thought that was excellent, that a man needs to focus on what does he want, what's going on with him, what are his boundaries, what are his values. I love that one. So the second one too, I was like, yes, it's so simple. So simple. Yes, that's true. And then the third one, which was the biggest of all, the creating safety. We all know that for women, safety and security, those are our top two. Like a man is really not going to get the best of us unless we have those two things, safety and security. So teaching men how to provide that is going to change the game. That's going to change everything. So all three of those, I just, yep, this is it. And it's said, it's a formula for the modern day man, right? Because I'm often talking about this. I'm often saying there were some things from my grandfather's era that I think are good. There's some things from this era that I think are good. And I wanted to kind of blend those together, right? So it's just like you said, we don't want to go all the way back, but we don't want to go so far to the other side that we're like, the man is overly sensitive. He doesn't know what he wants. He doesn't know how to lead. Like, no, we don't want that either. Evolutionarily, women, are kind of still the same. And so we don't find that guy, that Mr. Nice Guy, attractive. We don't. And so kind of creating something right in the middle, that is the sweet spot.
Yeah, I think you hit it on the head on all points. And men, we're baffled. Like, I don't know if the women of the world know this as much as we do about ourselves, but we're baffled. We're just like, I don't know how to be. Right. And that was really what, guys, when they get a self-help book, they kind of want to be told, just do this, this, and this. Yep. And there's a lot of resources out there that they can get a little airy-fairy, and the guy's left with thinking, still don't know what to do. So that was really a guiding principle in writing this book, was make it specific, make it actionable, make it understandable and achievable, so that a guy can actually go out and use some of the things. And hopefully you experienced it that way as well. I mean, that's generally the feedback I get, that it's incredibly actionable. And that was definitely a goal of mine. Very,
very great. I've been referring it to several men that I'm working with. I am a woman's coach, so that's my other business. I primarily work with women on embracing and rediscovering their femininity. So I'm on the other end of this spectrum. I'm very passionate about that, and maintaining the polarity from the woman's side of the fence, and making sure that she's staying dropped down in her body, not getting all up in her head, like, no, come back to your body, and so I work with women on that end of the fence. So I can relate to this, but on the other end of it.
Yeah. It's funny. I get so many women reaching out and saying, like, thank you for giving me words to what I've been longing for all these years, but I didn't quite know. And I swear over half the guys that have read my book probably got it from their girlfriend or wife or a trusted female friend, because it's given voice. Yeah, for sure.
And I bought several copies for guy friends of mine, because I was like, seriously, I need you to read this book. This is going to explain everything. And I have one young guy, he's like 25. He's like, oh, Miss Anita, this is the cheat code. Like, this is the cheat code. I said, okay, apply that, and trust me, you're going to be just fine. So excellent. So the latest book that you wrote is called The Art of Embodiment for Men, using A&I framework and daily practices to tame anxiety, heal trauma, and conquer your nice guy tendencies. This goes into more depth in some of the practices that you touched on in chapter 10 of your first book. So talk to us a little bit about embodiment practices and how they can help a man to maintain his masculine core.
Yeah, let's see. Let me just start with why did I write this book? I have a daily practice, and I receive that from the lineage that I've studied in over the years. And there's a way, I mean, I've been taught embodiment by a lot of people along the way. And while I've obviously greatly benefited from it, there was a way that it was taught that wasn't fully satisfying for me. It didn't seem to really get into the nuance of doing things that would, I think, unlock a lot of power of these exercises. And so I really set out to write the book that I kind of wanted to read and explain things in a way that they made sense to me. And then I hope that that's the way that things make sense to a lot of other people. And that's when I came up with the ANI framework. And one of the things that I've noticed is embodiment teachers want to add a lot of like variety and this creativity and innovation and all this fancy dancy and have a lot of different practices. But actually what I've found is that it's the quality of attention you bring and the quality of intention that you bring to the practice that is really what makes it powerful or not. And that's the ANI framework. ANI as attention and intention. And so I focus a lot on where you put your attention, the quality and the type of attention that you bring, and how to control your attention more appropriately. And then it's the same for intention. How do you bring more intention to the breath and movement in these practices? So I bring a very, I guess, fundamentals focused approach to this. It's not about cool new exercise. It's about how do you master the basics? Probably like an old school basketball coach, they would just drill you relentlessly on the fundamentals. And that's really what I do. Anyway, so this is why I set out to write a book. There's a lot of books on embodiment. There's a lot of books on like Kundalini yoga and all that. So there's a lot of works out there. And I like the last book, I think I've been able to bring not only a really accessible way to engage in these practices, but also one that I think focuses on what's actually important rather than just variety and new cool practices. So that's the why. I'll pause there for comment, or I'll just keep going as to what embodiment actually is.
Okay, because
yeah, okay.
You want men to kind of drop it down into their body more, right? Get out of their head, come into their body. Okay.
Yeah, that's where I was headed. Yeah, embodiment is about taking your attention, which is usually on the thinking mind, and you're trying to figure out everything, and taking that attention and turning it down into the body and towards any kind of sensation in the body. And we'll get to what kinds of sensation, but when you turn it towards sensation, then you just feel that sensation. And here's why that's important. When we're lost in our mind and we have no sense of our body, we're lost in a world of thoughts. Now, thoughts, as we all know, they're only about future and past. Thoughts really aren't about this moment. Experience is about this moment, but thoughts are about past and future. So anytime you're lost in your world of thoughts, which for most of us is almost all the time, you're going to be not present. You're not going to be here. You're going to be actually seeing a world in front of you that's not actually the actual world in front of you, but is colored by all of your thoughts, your projections, your memories, the patterns you've observed, et cetera, et cetera, et cetera.
Okay.
When you actually put some attention on sensation only happens in the now. So what it does is even just a little bit of attention on the sensation in your body anchors you and tethers you into the now. And then the rest of your awareness is able to be with the outside world in a much cleaner way, because you're not sort of colored by the movie that is overlaid on everything. And so, that sounds great, but let me get more specific, because I think that's what people wanted. So let's say I'm with my girlfriend and she's upset and she's throwing fireballs at me, the story that's natural. So I'm like, I'm sort of confused as to why she has to be so emotional. So
Right.
there's a thought that I'm confused, and I need to make sense of that. So the thinking mind kicks in, and usually what it's going to come up with is she's being an unreasonable bitch, you know, and I'm going to use the B word because I'm going to be that freaked out and that blaming her. That's the story in my head. And then I start responding as such. So if she's being an unreasonable bitch, I'm just going to shut down. I'm going to stonewall, or I'm going to be so frantic that I'm going to get defensive so I can get out of trouble. And I suddenly start dealing with my stories and explanations as if they're the real world. And then, of course, that's not relational. And then we're just, I mean, you know this as a therapist, then we're just blown up. Yeah, we're not going to connect at that point. But if I can have maybe some attention down in my body, I've trained for years and how to do this, you know, as a student, I can be more here and I can actually recognize that she's in a triggered state, but I don't have to go to the overlay about what it means. I don't have to necessarily sense the danger that comes up in my nervous system because I'm going to be more grounded in my own body. So that's sort of the why I want to be more into my own body. So again, I just talked a lot, so I'll pause for a second before.
Okay. And I do believe that today's man could benefit from these practices. I'd be curious about your thoughts about, you know, this modern world that we're in and all the distractions of our modern world. Like it's being in your head. And there's just so many distractions. Like you're right. I think most of us are not really in the present moment. All of these distractions that we have.
Yeah, it's so true. We spend all day on our phones. We spend all day consuming articles, blogs, emails, posts, videos. Like we're like information processing machines now. We're like little robots that we run around. So yeah. You know, I like that you brought this up because it's a topic I've been thinking about and writing about a lot recently. And it's a topic of spaciousness.
Okay.
Yeah, when we allow the world and its density, you know, which is what you were referring to, the density of the world and information, you know, it's like a lead blanket on us. It just weighs us down. And all we can do is start to revert to patterns and triggers and habits because there's just no space. So we start in our relational world, we start just kind of going off a habit and pattern and reaction. It is our job to create more spaciousness in our lives because when we don't, there's no room for the living, breathing moment for us to be with it. We just see patterns in our history and we just react out of survival almost. And we can't be relational without spaciousness. Spaciousness is an integral part of being truly relational in the moment with your partner. And I would suggest that a man who's kind of just crunched down by the weight of the world is not going to be in his masculine core. He's not going to have the spaciousness to really be his full self. So it's a big part of being masculine in my book. And, you know, embodiment practice, a daily practice is one way to create that spaciousness in your life because you sit down and you practice for 15, 30, 60 minutes, whatever your chosen duration. And you practice and it gives you not only for that day, but as you practice day after day, it starts to have a multiplicative effect where it's like a little force field that keeps things just slightly at bay. The force field might be right here or it might be out here, depending on how much you practice. So I've been talking a lot with guys about creating spaciousness in this world that is very, very dense as part of your journey to your masculine core.
Okay. I'm going to explore that a little on the feminine side too, because again, you know, I've been encouraging women to get back in touch with nature. Right? I'm a nature fanatic. You know, I love to go to the beach and I love to make sandcastles and I love to swim in the ocean and I love to feel that water. I love to, you know, float out there in the ocean and look up at the sky. And I love to garden and I love to put my hands in the dirt. And yeah, I want women to get back in touch with nature. I think that is a big part of their feminine journey.
Yeah.
Unplugging, of course, like when you're out there in your garden or you're at the beach or you're in hiking in the mountains, I need you to unplug and I need you to just be in that moment. Like you said, just kind of be in your body.
Yep.
And how does that feel? Not what you think. How does it feel?
Yeah.
That's what I've been encouraging women to do more. Right.
Yeah. That's really what embodiment is about. It's like practice feeling.
Right.
And we're talking about physical feeling, but I know you'll agree with what I'm about to say. That's the same capacity that then you can feel your emotions.
Exactly.
It's not two different. Yeah, it's not two different things. It's the same. So for guys, it's particularly important because we can't feel our emotions at all, in a lot of cases. So it really is the path to that. And yeah, I totally agree.
Mm-hmm.
And here's the thing. I like to draw the analogy of with pilots. Pilots have enforced work rest cycles. So if you didn't have those, the pilot would be like, I'm good. I can go another, and I'm earn some extra money. And then, something happens.
Right.
So they save the pilot from himself and his, overgrown sense of what he can handle. Right. And they force him to rest for a certain number of hours that he actually works, or, he or she, it's not gendered. That's what you have to do for yourself.
Mm-hmm.
That's what you have to do for yourself. Is you have to enforce a work rest cycle on yourself, because you can always work more. You can always consume more information, and you will. But it's not going to be good for you. You got to force yourself.
I agree. And I have we have built-in downtime at our house. Everyone turns in their phone at 9:30. And so you don't have to go to bed then, because I like to read. My daughter likes to knit. My son likes to draw. There are other things that we can do that aren't consuming, letting all this stuff in. And I'm very sensitive about that I don't like for the outside world and all of its stuff to get in all the time.
Yeah.
I want my home to be a place of peace, a place almost like I have the sign up on my bedroom door that said, "This is my happy place." And yes, I want my whole home to be my happy place. I don't want everything that's going on out in the world coming into my home. So we have that at home. I have to build in that time with me and all of my adult kids. Like, no, 9:30 is it. We're done for the day. Let's make sure that for the next hour or hour and a half, we're not looking at our phones, we're not watching television, we're doing something else, we're creating something, we're reading something, and then we're drifting off into a good sleep. So yes, I think that's important. People have really gotten away from that. So yes. So I have one more question for you. And I tend to ask all of my guests this question. It gets a little off script, but I'm just curious as to what everyone's thoughts and ideas are about this. So right now in 2022, we have a culture right now that men and women are very much at odds. They're really struggling in the area of relationships. So you have like Red Pill over here, you have MGTOW, you have the feminists over here, you have women who are they've had it, I'm done with men. And so I'd be curious to know, what are your thoughts to see if we could all come back to one accord, kind of get back on the same page, or I like to say, get back to love. I want us to return to love. And people are so, going in the opposite direction of that.
Yeah. What first comes up for me is a lot of compassion for both sides, because I think both sides have been really burned in the relational space. And they've been burned so badly or so frequently that they've given up.
Yeah.
And it's hard, because we all know that love and partnering it's biological. And so to go without that is really sad, but it's sad because it actually seems easier just to go without than to try. And what I would say is, you can be more successful, men and women. You can be more successful by paying attention to these relationship dynamics. And for guys, that's why I wrote the book. one of the ways they can do better is understanding this masculine feminine dynamic and start to master the dynamic so you can bring that into the relationship, and you're going to see really different, really more positive results when you do that. And that's my offering to the world. But yeah, to both sides, I would just say I feel you, and it can be better. I promise you it can, if you tap the right resources.
For sure. And I'm hoping, I'm hoping for that. I really am, because I have a lot of clients right now. Like I said, the majority of them are women, but I do have a few male clients. And they want to partner with a healthy feminine woman. But they also want to be a good, healthy, masculine man. And so a lot of them are former nice guys, and I've had to give them Dr. Robert Glover's book. I was like, oh, you got to read this because, you got some nice guy tendencies. So I usually have them read that book. And they're moving on to, Way of the Superior Man. They're moving on to your book, because I'm like, yes, I want you to have a strong frame, but I also want you to consider the woman that you're choosing. Like you said, that's the balance in it, is that I always tell men, I love a man with a plan, and he comes to me. He knows, what his vision is for his life. He has a plan. He has a plan for me in his life. And he says, how do you feel about that? Would you be willing to come alongside me and do that? Mm-hmm. I go, yes, I would. Like, that's the ideal. So yes, that's why I love this work, because it's so needed. It's so needed right now with everything that's going on. Is a healthy reference. So that's what I'm telling men. We're not trying to emasculate men. We're not trying to turn men into something that is less masculine. No, we want you to be masculine. And it's like I said, it's like taking some of the old, blending some of the new, and blending that together. That is what's going to create the comprehensive man. That's so important. So excellent.
Yeah, that last point you made sticks, because it reminds me of something I say to guys. It's like sometimes she seems like she wants to kill you, but she is just feeling the pain of you not stepping up, and she actually wants you to step. She wants to feel closer to you, even though to you it feels like she's pushing you away or putting you down. She wants more from you and to feel closer to you. So we see this the same way.
Yep, that's it. So thank you so much. This has been a wonderful episode. People are super excited. This episode will launch next Monday at 9 a.m. People are super excited for this episode. Is there something you want my listeners to go and check out? A product or a service?
Yeah, a few things. Check out the books on Amazon. And if you enjoy the books, please do the reviews. They help me a lot. And I also have courses, video courses on my website, gsyoungblood.com. Just hit the green button that says courses. And you can really deepen your practice. I've just released an embodiment course a few weeks ago. And then the best way to see my work is just Instagram, GS Youngblood, MIR, masculine in relationship, MIR.
Okay, awesome. Thank you so much.
Thanks, Anita.
Ladies and gentlemen, if you are not subscribed to the podcast, please do me the biggest favor ever and subscribe. If you're watching this video on YouTube, please subscribe to the channel and hit that bell icon to be notified when new episodes and videos come out on the channel. If you have a question for me, if you want to know more about my services, you can go to betterlovemovement.com/services, where you can learn all about me and the services that I provide. If you want to ask a question that you want answered on the podcast, please email it to info@betterlovemovement.com. Thank you so much, GS, for joining us this evening.
Thanks, Anita.
Thank you, everyone. And as always, stay open to love. Thank you so much for listening to this week's episode of the Better Love Movement podcast. If you are not subscribed to the podcast, please do so now so that you can be alerted every Monday when a new episode comes out. Please rate and review this podcast, as your ratings help me to grow the podcast and offer more free content to you. If you are watching this episode on YouTube, please do me a huge favor and subscribe to the channel. Give this video a thumbs up and share it if it brought you value. If you have a question that you would like to have answered on the show, please send it to me at info@betterlovemovement.com. You can also reach me on my website, www.betterlovemovement.com, to get more information on love mentoring and other services offered. Thank you so much for listening, and as always, stay open to love.